Good afternoon, everyone. This is Dan Ray. I am not on video, but I've got a slide to share with you all. We are a number of different people that have come together to discuss a couple of different topics this afternoon. I put together this really powerful picture of an eye in PowerPoint, and then did this super fancy white with black agenda slide to get us started. The first thing we talked about doing together was introductions, because we have a number of people that haven't been on this live event that we've done in the past. I'm going to make sure on LinkedIn that we actually went live. If anybody else can do that as well, I'd appreciate it, just to make sure I got the link connected to the live event correctly. It looks like we did. Excellent. Cherokee, would you mind starting with introductions?
Absolutely. So my name is Cherokee Boos. I am currently an MCT. I've been working in the IT field for about 15 years, and I've held a lot of Microsoft certifications along the way. It's always been a big area for me, so I appreciate being here and being in that space. I've worked in the field as well as training for a number of years. I have mentally been in a different space and just some different technologies. So I'm excited to kind of come back to Azure and brush up on some things that I haven't visited in a while. And in terms of socials, I think LinkedIn is a good way. If you guys have any follow-up questions after today, that would probably be the best way to get a hold of me.
Excellent. And I think alphabetically, I'm next. My name's Dan Ray, and I am a recent MVP in Office Apps and Services. I live in DeKalb, Illinois. Cherokee and I met through a Women in IT study group that she was hosting through, was it the Women in IT Pros, Cherokee?
That's correct, yes.
Yeah. And just have kept in touch over time. And I invited her, as well as a few other new folks, as well as people that have been on the, I say show in quotes, I guess, because we haven't really completely branded this or come up with a consistent time that we're doing this on LinkedIn. The Friday afternoons in the US and the early evenings in Ireland seem to be a good time for most. But as we make some of those decisions, this will hopefully have a cadence and a show name, or a way for you to tell what's going to be happening week to week, or every other week, every month, however often we decide works for us as a group. And I'm looking forward to today. This is very informal. We've got plenty of people in the audience, which is great. Thank you. And who's next alphabetically? Frank, I think you're next.
Okay, Frank Falvey is my name, and I'm a recent MCT as well, and I'm nominated as an MVP, so my track to that is with Azure. And I suppose the last 5 years I've done a number of Azure certifications. And I'm kind of here just to share my knowledge on Azure with people as part of the MVP, I suppose. And most recent met with Dan, and that's why I'm here. So thank you, Dan.
Thanks so much. Mike, I believe you're next.
Hello, I'm Mica Hanson. I came from a background as originally a rep for Microsoft in the retail space. I moved to be a national trainer for Microsoft in the retail space. And now I'm focused on helping a major hospital system with adoption That's my big focus is, features and benefits, how to get people excited about technology and what it can do for them. So that's a little about me. Thanks for allowing me to be here, Dan.
Yeah. And Mica, we met when I think I reached out because I was supporting your major hospital system and wanted to know what you were doing in the training area and with computers, whether those were still physical rooms with lab computers or whether it was kind of where you could find space or virtual or all of the above. So I'm working on another one of those projects now for another healthcare company up in Chicago that got acquired by a Florida hospital that I also supported. So it's been
great.
interesting.
They're lucky to have you.
Yeah, some things come full circle, right? Going back in person finally.
Yeah.
And Rosemary. So cool. Yeah.
Yes, hi. My name is Rosemary McCracken. I am in Richmond, Virginia. And I have been primarily a classroom computer trainer since the very beginning of Microsoft. I saw the very beginnings of Word and Excel and actually had made the transition from the old WordPerfect and Lotus. So I have been here from the very beginning. I focus on end user training. And I am excited to be here as well.
Yeah. And Rosemary and I met through a couple of the projects that I have that are more on the end user side. And she is just phenomenal with putting together PowerPoints, giving feedback on how to best engage end users and make things understood, the why of why they are changing, the why of why you're using Microsoft Teams, a lot of those types of areas. She's been super helpful in making sure that I take it down a notch from the, the more technical stuff to end users that are new to the technology. So thank you for being here. And I don't think we had anybody else join us. We've got a open invite. If anybody would be interested, feel free to let us know in the chat if you'd like. If you have questions, feel free to do that in the chat. We're on LinkedIn, we're on Twitter, we're on YouTube, and my Facebook. So we're on at least 4 platforms. I think we're also on Twitch. But if anybody can figure out Twitch, I'd be happy to learn more about it because I don't know how Twitch really works other than a gaming platform owned by Amazon. I put the agenda together to start with an end user discussion. And I am working on 2 projects. As I indicated, Mica, our paths crossed in looking at some of that end user change. The change, ironically, that I'm doing for the hospital system in Chicago is PeopleSoft requisition training. So it's not anything that I have done in the past, but it is something that I've got users that are just trying to figure out that why and what's changing and when and how and what they need to do, and lots of parking lot questions because it's not my expertise or background. Anything that you or Rosemary would like to share in kind of end user training, end user change and adoption planning?
Yeah, well, I think if one big question that you kind of have to overcome is the big so what, people are wanting to know how it benefits them and why they should care. And I really like to look at things from like a neuroscience kind of perspective when it comes to learning. Like you have to really understand how to get them engaged. And I think a big thing, especially, with adult learning, is curiosity and also including them in the process. So I think having like a good roadmap with the technical side to make sure that the end users are a part of the conversation from the beginning, so that as you go along, the adoption and the planning is a part of that entire implementation process. And people can really be engaged, and you can really get those stakeholders in early and find out what people do and how this will benefit them, so you can answer that big so what question.
That's awesome. That's one of the first things we were doing was preparing for this rollout, which happened today. So all the change happened on April Fool's Day. And that was not by design or plan. It was just the Friday and I guess the end of the quarter and other things from a business perspective on when the change had to happen. But getting people involved early, I would agree. We got people involved maybe a little too early before we had all the answers. So, sometimes making them feel part of that journey, like you said, is important. And then letting them know that they came in on the early part of that journey where we don't have all the answers, but we can, get back with them as those answers are built. Great. Rosemary, I know you're going to be helping me with another project where we have a number of government users that have never used Teams. They're coming from Skype. They don't even have the ability to set up Teams unless that's changed in the last couple of weeks. How, I know we discussed, some thoughts you had on how to approach that. Is that something you've done in other projects or want to share any of that insight with folks?
Sure. I have done some training with other government agencies, and security is always a big issue with government agencies specifically. And they often do not have access to all the features of Teams that you would like them to have. So, from a trainer's perspective, of course, one of the first things you need to do is you need to test out their environment and make sure that you know what they can and what they cannot do, what they will have access to, what apps are they going to be able to use, if any, and what the process is. Sometimes they'll be allowed to create teams, but they may have to go through a process of submitting a request to IT or to their manager, and just making sure that you have had a conversation with the IT team to know exactly what their process is, that you have gone in there and tested out their specific setup so that it's not a surprise when you get in there. Oh, I had a whole hour planned to do this, and that's not even an option. So, um, and to kind of tag on to what Mica said, another big part, and I agree with everything she said, but another big part for me is people have to know why. Why am I learning this? Why are we switching from email or Skype or whatever to Teams? What are the advantages? How is this going to help me? Because people in general are creatures of habit and they like what they know. And even if it's going to be shorter, it's scary because it's new and it's uncomfortable. And making sure that you show them the benefit of why are we switching? Why is everybody moving in this direction? Is going to get a lot of those users on board and excited, as Mica said, about learning something new.
That's great. And that hits a lot of the things we found. So the why, back to the why for this government agency, is because a lot of the groups are already set up. So the thing the government agency wanted to avoid was everybody setting up yet another accounting group or yet another team that has a name that we already have people in. So I understood their IT needs from a security and just from a, let's not duplicate something that's already done, but making sure the users were kind of engaged, maybe understand timing of when they will have those first teams in Microsoft Teams. I've heard the lowercase t and the uppercase t, the Teams product, and then the teams that you're part of in Teams. And, chat is something that's replacing what they did in Skype. And then the meeting capability is being rolled out to them. But to your point about security, they've turned off the ability for people to share their entire desktop. Why? Because there's all sorts of things that can go wrong if you're sharing your entire desktop.
Right.
You can inadvertently share something that's, private. Any other thoughts from you or others on that? Feel free to come off mute if you're on mute.
I agree with Rosemary, like figuring out what people actually have in their, what they're able to use within Teams and things like that. And just, hopefully before they determine that, they really can dig in and look at what their work processes are and what they actually are going to benefit from. And I know there has to be security in place, but sometimes I'm like, no, this is such a cool feature. Like, you can't take that away from people, but yeah, I totally get it. So yeah, just determining which features are necessary, I guess, and hoping it's the good ones.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and just to
I
add to
saw
that,
Go
oops,
ahead.
sorry. Just
No,
like Mica had
go.
mentioned, and knowing what that current as is picture is for the current workflow, because maybe there's a feature that you'd want to spend certain time on, like additional time going more so, in depth, if it was able to integrate with maybe a third party that, like, if you get a little bit of background information ahead of time. And just to also reiterate what Rosemary said about and also Mica, for providing the why, that's just going to help you get that buy-in for a number of reasons, especially from a lot of situations that I worked in concerning security. When you're trying to make your argument or use case to get that upper level C-suite buy-in, that definitely helps drive that conversation, is having a clear why.
And I'm just asking Stacy in the comments if she can be my why Twitch, because I don't really understand Twitch at all. And so hopefully Stacy can help us with why we would want to use a gaming platform, or even how, the how of it. I don't know what I'm doing on Twitch. I can find the stream, but then I can't find the recording, and I don't know if it's something I'm doing wrong or my unfamiliarity with that platform. Well, I know we had some other topics here as well. Cherokee, you had some information prepared from a kind of the transition from the end user to how we could maybe set up some of these services, whether it be SharePoint or other types of services that might be from an end user perspective in the cloud.
Yeah, actually, this one, I was thinking about it the other day, thinking about how to describe, just cloud computing in general. I was asked to do that for someone. And one of the main benefits in cloud that you'll hear people talk about so often is elasticity, or being able to have those dynamic resources. And so one of the ways you can take advantage of that, and actually, like Mica had mentioned, understanding those workloads or workflows can be really important, not just in terms of integration, but also things you think like data lifecycle management. And then if you even, maybe there's like a regulatory compliance that helps drive that decision, but also customers are always really excited when you can help save them money. So if you can identify, like a data lifecycle management, and then intelligently utilize different services that Azure Microsoft has to offer, then you can reduce costs by leveraging these. So a lot of these tips that were just discussed, I'm doing the opposite of, because I did kind of just put this together last minute, so I don't have all the neuroscience behind everything and timing. So this is just an informal discussion. And hopefully you can see my screen. It's just a basic, again, very, like Dan said, black and white text PowerPoint here, nothing too fancy. Hopefully you see that. But yeah, your virtual machine scale sets. First, I just wanted to mention what they are, because there's a couple of concepts that sometimes people get mixed up, or maybe just don't fully understand around some options that we have here in Azure. So I just want to explain what a virtual machine scale set is. We'll also look at what it's not in terms of availability set. I said sometimes there's some confusion with that, so we'll look at just the other side of that. And then if there's time, we'll run through a demo. Although my account, there's something a little bit wonky going on, so we can walk through the steps, but it won't actually spin up the scale set at the moment. But that's another story. So what can you get with your virtual machine scale sets? Well, these are going to allow you to create and manage a group of load balanced virtual machines at scale. So you have to just kind of think about what you're trying to achieve here, similar to that why, right? Like, so why are we doing this? And then you start with that question. You can achieve high availability by auto scaling to create thousands of virtual machines in minutes. Literally, you can, at the touch of a button. And that's really one thing, is to be able to scale at and manage at scale. So rather than performing a particular function on just like one virtual machine, you could literally, if they're in the scale set, go ahead and issue a command, and then it will potentially up to that 1,000 issue that command for that entire scale set. You can see how that can be pretty powerful at scale here. And then the high availability, you know, that just gives you the real ability to be able to handle bursts or lulls in your workflow. Not every single workflow is at that steady pace, kind of, you know, like Mike was mentioning. You really have to understand that to be able to provide some of these solutions. So with virtual machine scale sets, you do have the option to create and really define some granular policies. And you can even utilize something called auto scaling. So you can essentially set like triggers, like upper control limits or lower control thresholds there, to set predefined triggers to allow for expansion or reduction based on how that workflow is changing. Or you could set them, you know, by a specific schedule. Maybe you have shift work or something like that in your environment. So just a couple different options there. And then when it mentioned simplifying networking, the way that that is achieved is by, you know, you're utilizing this load balancer that is going to conceal all of those internal VM IP addresses. NAT is happening. You can set specific NAT policies, but it's literally, and you'll see as we go into the portal, it's a wizard you can walk through. So super easy, a lot of different options. Obviously, that's not the only way that you can configure these. You can use PowerShell and other different integrations as well, but we're just going to walk through the portal there. And yeah, so just supporting hyperscale at workloads. So you can use our virtual machine scale sets to support, you know, to be able to handle that, like I mentioned, but you could also think about this from front-end web servers or even container orchestration. So at large scale, microservice clusters, Azure Kubernetes services, and virtual service fabric all run on virtual machine scale sets. So there's a lot to that. There's even some additional settings that we'll kind of take a peek at in terms of orchestration that you might want to discover a little more about if you're looking at it from that hyperscale lens, because you can use the machines in a slightly different way for that. So if you're using something like quorum settings for voting and so forth, then you do have that option as well. Okay, moving forward here. This was just a quick little, and again, this is like what not to do for the end users. No, it was just put together quickly. So I wanted to also just show the load balancing concept, if this is something new for you in terms of that networking simplification idea. So you will need to work with a gateway in some regard for that, but we'll go ahead and move forward. This is an interesting slide. And the reason I just wanted to drop this in here was to kind of reiterate all the different, when you think about, and this is exactly where my brain goes sometimes, is security like an onion, right? Multiple layers. And that's kind of what it looks like here. And you can utilize these concepts for that. You could use it for a lot of high availability, and by logically separating or having a systematic or surgical approach to how you deploy infrastructure, you can build baked in fault tolerance. And so looking at this, let's just talk about some of these different domains here. We won't cover all of them. And the reason I'm explaining them is so that we can understand what an availability set is and then how it differs from a scale set. And I have to keep an eye on the time. Somebody can cut me off at any point if we need to here. So.
Oh, you're good. Thank
All
you.
right. Your fault domain is going to be physical. So if you think about in a data center, so we're talking about cloud, but really cloud is just a data center. It's Microsoft owned data centers, right? And your fault domains, physical. So if you think, I was trying to come up, I am like big on just little, what is it? When you're talking about the different associations or anything like that, just mnemonics, or what is, I think I just said that wrong, but anyways, I come up with little acronyms and stuff. So fault domain, you might want to say for physical, phonetically, like the F and the PH for physical. I don't know, maybe that doesn't land with you, but keep that in mind. Fault domain is physical. So this is in logical separation in a physical manner. Like if you want to use a rack as a designation for that, you can. So if you have 10 racks, think 10 different fault domains. So we're talking the physical hardware here. Now, your upgrade domains are going to be slightly different in the regard of not physical, but logical. So they're going to be groups of virtual machines that are grouped by the ability to be rebooted together. So I don't know how many of you have ever had updates and then maybe something didn't work as perfectly as you had planned after that update had occurred. So having different upgrade or update domains will allow you to roll out changes in phases or updates in waves there, so that you don't break everything all at one time, which can and does happen sometimes if you don't have this kind of approach to it. We won't talk about storage scale units too much here. We really want to focus on the availability zone, which is kind of moving outward here. You can see that. And your availability zone is really going to be providing the physical area in which we can select for certain types of maybe disaster recovery or failover situations. So let me just check here to make sure I'm not missing anything I want to cover. And if you have any questions, feel free.
I'll check the chat too, but I don't see any questions. Correct.
All right, I'm just going to move this slide so we can dig a little bit further into the availability zones, like I mentioned. Obviously, in the name, you see this term high availability. So Azure Virtual, so with that, your high availability, it offers, protects you against data center failures. How does that happen? Well, we have the ability to really have 3 different separate units. And these are just icons for separate power source, separate networking sources, and separate cooling sources. So the data centers actually have redundant or multiple providers for the utilities. Maybe they're doing something like their own wind or water generated turbines running on site in addition to a utility company, something like that. Same thing for the networking. Maybe they're using, external ISPs as well as their internal, service fabric there, cooling, same idea. So when you're creating these different solutions, these are just a few things to think about. The reason I wanted to frame that up is to kind of segue into just this idea of zonal services and how it relates to these availability zones. So inside of our Azure regions, and if you think about that like union diagram we were just looking at, that was where the availability zone was nested inside of there. And so you can see here for the Azure regions that are actually supporting this service, they're going to have 3 different availability zones inside of them. And so zonal services is not, and I probably have missed some things here. Like I said, when I revisited, I've been away from Azure for a little bit and I came back in just recently, and there's a lot of changes. So that's one thing about the cloud I'm sure all of you already know, but constantly being updated and new features added. So if you have certain components that you need to pin to a specific Azure region and then specific zones, this is how you would do that. And so, for example, in this situation with availability sets, you're actually pinning those virtual machines to the different zones. So you have your different, like here you can see the icons that we just looked at with the separate electricity, cooling, and networking to provide that redundancy and fault tolerance. So that's where you hear the term availability set, okay? And that's just not what we're going to be looking at in the portal, but I wanted to highlight that and bring it up because it is important to understand the differences between those. And then as we go through the wizard, you'll see some of these options, and then just knowing how they either stack or what that interplay is with the relationship, because you can see here with our fault domains, remember physical being that fault domains, and then you have each one of those racks, and then you have your virtual machines, and then the update domains designated as well. So just by approaching it in that way, hopefully that'll help you wrap your brain around it when we hop into the demo, which we'll do right now. And let me go ahead and pull that over.
While you're doing that, I'm going to bring up Sherry Oswald, who's also joined us. Sherry, welcome.
So a couple different ways you could do that. I'm going to start by I'm here at portal.azure.com on my landing page, my homepage here. You can see that I've recently searched and selected this virtual machine scale sets, and you can see my history. I did the lazy type here and just typed in VMSS. So that's, the acronym. Again, I'm people in IT, right? That's just, we kind of gravitate towards those, less typing, I guess. But virtual machine scale sets, you also have the ability to create them, like I said, in a number of other ways as well. It's really great to think about infrastructure as a service for a lot of organizations. And why that's important is because if you already are utilizing ARM templates or some of those other, we talked about at hyperscale, if you're using any kind of large orchestration tooling, you can take these templates, so your virtual machine, if you create, like an ARM template or something, and then you already have that VM template, you can reuse these different components. They work nicely and complement each other. So you can have a real tight control over governance and just creating a uniform and controlled environment there. I'm just going to select this option. You can also create virtual machine scale sets by creating an initial virtual machine and then going about it that way. But we'll just select create a virtual machine scale set. In a second. And I'll just select this pre-existing resource group that I have. You could create your own. So we'll just call this our RGO2 VMSS. Now, I'm sticking with my availabilities, my region here. Now, I do have this option. Remember, we looked at that slide with the separate lightning for power, it's not lightning, but power, cooling, and networking. So by manually selecting this, I can strategically place this virtual machine scale set or my assets in different availability zones here. So I have a good idea as to what that disaster recovery process or plan would look like. Now, just select one. This is the area that I said, I might need to come back and revisit. There's a lot to this. And sometimes, you might have heard the saying, the devil's in the details. I think that this could really be one of those areas that you need to spend some time in. And I'm saying this because this is my full disclosure. I'm not really familiar with this. So one cool thing you can do in the Azure portal that I absolutely love are the hover and discover bubbles. So let's take a look at that here with the orchestration mode. Also, another thing I really like, because I can see it's kind of going off the screen, we can just open it, direct link to our Microsoft Docs here. So this is my train of thought where I was going when I was trying to figure out, well, what's the difference here between our modes of virtual machine scale sets. So I won't get into the weeds with this. Really quick, you have the option for your uniform orchestration. Think uniform twinning, okay? So identical twins, the identical VMs spun up. Why would you want to do that? Well, you have some ability to manage or customize individual virtual machine instances. Uniform uses identical VM instances, and they're exposed via the virtual machine scale set virtual machine API commands. Not compatible with standard infrastructure as a service virtual machine API commands. Let me see here. We have a little bit different with the Azure management features, such as your Azure Resource Manager, resource tagging, Azure Backup, or Azure Site Recovery. So uniform orchestration provides fault tolerance, fault domain high availability guarantees when configured with fewer than 100 instances. Uniform orchestration is generally available and supports a full range of scale set management and orchestration, including metrics, auto scaling, and so forth. So I mentioned auto scaling. So in the short of it, you're taking a look at that. That's where my brain is, identical, right? So you do have a few of those API considerations, but when you're looking at the flexible orchestration, this is where you get additional flexibility. You can also pay attention to the instant up to 100 there, whereas with the flexible orchestration to 1,000, and you don't have to have that identical image there as well. So you can scale out your application while maintaining fault domain isolation, which is essential. This is the thing here for those quorum-based or stateful workloads. So again, going back to understanding what kind of environment you have, what kind of workloads you're running, and then is that solution even viable for me? So if you didn't kind of go through that process, you know, you might be in trouble later on down the road there. For your security type, you can just pick the different types of virtual machines. Again, this is going to kind of just fall back on what your security policy is for your organization. And depending on which region you select, you may or may not have certain free images available to you to use. I'm just going to leave this default because it is free. But like I said, we'll get to the end here, but we won't be able to actually spin it up. You can also leverage Azure Spot Instance in conjunction if you're flexible in terms of when you need this workload, because as a caveat here, Azure may recall capacity whenever you're getting those cost savings with the Azure Spot instances. And then here, I'm not going to be able to select the size. This is where I was having my little issue. I think there might be some kind of quota. I had to reset my Azure tenant and rebuild that last night. So I'm not able to select that, but you would select the appropriate size for your workload and OS of choice. And you could just go ahead and put in, you know, who your user is. So I could put in myself if I know how to spell my name. And I'm not going to go into all these other tabs. You do have the options, and there are slight differences with, you know, caveats with disks and how you want that to work and so forth. But literally, you would just hit review and create to spin up that particular scale set. And then you, of course, have all the, like I said, these other tabs here you could really dig into and create a very granular option. But I think that that's about it at the high level of what a virtual machine scale set is. Hopefully that makes some sense, right? So if you have these workloads with, you know, kind of an unusual parameters or workflows, then these would come in handy. And there are different settings that you can utilize in terms of auto scaling when you want to set that up. For example, you can set your thresholds here. So your scaling, right? This is actually pretty good to take a look at. You can specify like how many initial instances you want. Now, scaling, when you go into this custom option, this is where you can get really granular. So what's your minimum number of instances, your maximum number of instances? So this is going to be when do you scale out? Remember, scaling up, you're adding resources like CPU, RAM, disks. Scaling out, you're adding instances. So that's what we're doing when we're creating these virtual machine scale sets. So when let's say I have an application, I have a web server, and this web server gets a lot of traffic, and I'm now computing at over 75% of my CPU utilization. Okay, I'm going to monitor that for 10 minutes. You can modify this sample window, if you will. And then what do you want me to do? Whenever I realize, okay, well, the average over this 10-minute window is pegging in at 80% utilization. So I'm going to go ahead and spin up another VM. And then you could change that depending on what you wanted that to look like, as well as think about the transverse of that, because then that's where you can really leverage those cost savings by scaling in, right? You don't want to be running unnecessary assets. That's the whole concept of this. So hopefully that provides a little bit of insight as to what a virtual machine scale set is if you've never encountered that before.
Definitely. I know, Rosemary, that's one of the things we were talking about. I can get as, I'm big to begin with. I'm 6'4", so I'm always called the big guy. But no matter how big I am, I can't be in two places at once. So Rosemary and I started some of our discussions because I've got some overlapping projects that have deliverables, and it's helpful to be able to scale in the way you're describing. Have more instances of you or trainers or people to monitor a chat like in this meeting.
Yeah, and it's all, and I mean, the great part about it is, I mean, you can predefine it and then walk away.
Yes. So we've also had Sherry Oswald join us. Sherry, would you like to introduce yourself? I think she stepped away for a little bit, so she may not be back here just yet, but I want to make sure she knows that, yeah, no big deal there. Just wanted to acknowledge that she's with us. And then Frank, I know, anybody else have questions or comments so far?
Thank you for the great example of how it all kind of works together. That was really great.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're welcome. There's just so much, and like I mentioned, it's every nook and cranny you can go pretty deep in.
Yeah, Turkey, when you said you stepped away from Azure for a while, were you working in the old classic portal or?
No, my brain actually, I've been in AWS land lately. I feel like, this is, I don't want to hear any like boos or hisses, but I think it's cool because a lot of companies are, multi-cloud now. And then looking at moving forward, I just think having integration options is going to be important to be able to satisfy a lot of the existing customers, especially bigger customers. That may have already adopted multiple framework or multiple platforms.
Yeah, I'd done some AWS there last year as well, and it's kind of moving from one platform to the other. It's very confusing. Like it's, like we'd say like in AWS they have the VPC for their virtual private cloud. Microsoft has a different version of it then. So
for sure. Sometimes, I mean, the conceptually, it's the same of terminology. That's always fun, right?
yeah. Like they have Lambda is their serverless one, isn't it?
Yeah, comparable to Azure Functions.
Yeah, Azure Functions. So like it's the actual same thing under the hood.
Exactly.
But just a different naming. So it's if you start moving to different platforms, it gets very kind of confusing, I thought.
So yes, and that's why I wanted to have my little resources here, like show you the portal and the hover and discover bubbles, because sometimes people can misspeak and say one little thing that has a different context. So always double check, especially for before you deploy in a production environment, right? Kind of like Rosemary was mentioning, test it so you know their environment, but it's always testing.
Hey, Sherry.
And I would say, I would also add that terminology is a great thing to start with for end user training as well. not necessarily the technical side, but just simple terminology. What's the difference between a team and a channel? Vocabulary, whenever you learn anything new, is always very important so that you can speak the same language as other people and never assume that people know. Sometimes you have to get pretty basic. What is the difference between a conversation and a channel and a team, and making sure that they know the terminology so that they can speak intelligently with other people.
I have to agree with you, Rosemary, on that. You start speaking in acronyms and you lose them real quick, real fast, right? They don't.
Yes.
They can't connect when they're looking at you with a little cocked head and squinty eyebrows. They're like, obviously didn't understand what she just said. My husband's a firefighter. He does that to me all the time. It's like, don't speak in vernacular. I don't know what you're saying. So
it even helps them when they want to look things up, if they want to look up on Google, so they know, what am I supposed to look up here? What's the topic that I want to know about on a YouTube? So knowing that terminology can also help them investigate further on their own if they know what to look up on the web.
right. So a lot of acronyms have different meanings in different work streams and different industries. They reuse the same acronyms.
Those are fun, huh?
And Microsoft likes to reuse their own acronyms. They use the same ones over and over again. So, they just change what it refers to every now and then. But that's always helpful.
And then sometimes there are situations where it used to be called something else, but in the newer version, it's called something different.
Right, exactly.
Very true. Sherry, we went through introductions earlier. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Oh, thanks for having me, by the way. I was trying to get situated, switching gears, but I'm Sherry Oswald. I'm with Power Up Learning, and I'm the Chief Experience Officer. My specialty is adoption, consumption, and learning. So thank you for having me.
This is probably the first time where we've been at least even from a standpoint of, adoption, champions, end user focused. And then, the Azure and the behind the scenes, the back of house, whatever you want to call the servers and the tech or the cloud, right? Because some of this is cloud based now. So thanks for joining us, Sherry.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. We went through some end user discussion. We've done the scale sets with Azure. And then Frank did have a short, 10-minute introduction to Azure AD, because for almost our customers that Sherry, Mica, Rosemary, myself work with, they have Active Directory, which has been around for over 20 years. And they might be either moving into Azure Active Directory or looking at how to migrate from maybe on-premises to the cloud. So Frank, did you have a presentation that you want me to share here, or?
Yeah, just before, you were saying some of your customers were going to move, connect their Active Directory, their on-premise to the cloud, to Azure Active Directory, and they're using Azure AD Connect. When I was actually looking up some of the stuff on it, that's actually the new one that's actually there, and it's more cost effective. It's cheaper. It's called Azure AD Sync. Have you heard of that one?
I have. I'm trying to keep up. I'm similar to Cherokee.
Yeah,
I'm trying in so many ponds.
I'll just see, can I find, I have a slide picture of it. 1 second, I'll see, can I share it with you?
So Frank, I think I lost your screen sharing too in the meeting here. You might have to reshare.
Okay. 1 second now. Have you got that there, Dan?
Yeah, it looks like it's coming through. There we go.
Yeah. Can you see that picture there?
We're seeing your restream window, so you might have shared the other monitor or something. Let me know if that's the one you want.
It's just
So I see a browser with a bunch of tabs, and the restream is the tab that you're on in the window I see.
okay. This technology stuff. So
No worries.
Dan, if you could just search for Azure AD Connect Cloud Sync, and there's a picture in, that gives a slide.
Sure, let me see if I can bring up a browser here on that monitor. I'm of course using the other platform today, so I'm using my Mac computer, and I'm not as comfortable navigating all over it and in Restream at the same time. And hopefully you can see this. Is my screen shared okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks
Excellent.
great.
Excellent.
I just wanted to say real quick, thanks everybody. I have to go, but I'm so grateful I got to be a part of this, and I can't wait to watch the rest a little bit later today.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.
Appreciate you coming. Azure AD Connect Sync.
Frank? Yeah, the one I have is it's Azure AD Connect Cloud Sync. And you might find the same picture. Because with Azure AD Connect, it uses SQL servers and things like that for storing stuff, whereas costing you money, whereas the other one doesn't. It's just like everything just syncs like an API.
Is it this one?
That's similar, yeah.
Cool.
It, that's it. But there's a picture. If you just search pictures, it gives you the way it gives you the two pillars, Azure AD Connect, and then it gives you Azure AD Cloud Sync, and the infrastructure part on the AD Connect is heavy on-premise footprint, whereas the Cloud Sync one is a light agent. And then, as I was saying about the cost part, like it's expensive for Azure AD Connect, and the Sync one is low cost. And the Sync one is high availability, and AD Connect there's no high availability with it, so it's way more advanced.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm finding it with that search. Did you use Google?
I'd say so. Yeah, maybe if you just, if you look for pictures, I'll see if you might.
Yeah, here's the pictures that come up with Azure AD Cloud Sync picture.
If I send you the picture, you might just share it, yeah, in LinkedIn. Maybe.
Yeah, you could actually share it on LinkedIn. That'd work.
Yeah.
And then, did you want me to bring up your video from YouTube, or do you want to share your screen?
Well, I suppose will I just do the slides here for the. Can you see my screen there now?
Let me check. I have to turn off mine. Frank, I'm
If you
still
need the
seeing the
toggle.
window.
There you
Still
go.
seeing the window with Restream, it looks like. So if you put them, I don't know if you shared the browser window only, or if wherever that browser window is.
One
if you
second
could go
now, I'll just go into it again. Okay.
Thank you, Sherry, for putting those links in.
That's in the private chat if you want to share those live. Whichever
Can
one
you
you
see?
Yeah, thank you.
Can you see this one here now, Dan?
Yes, yeah, that's perfect. Yep.
Okay, so this is just the the one I was just telling you there. What is the cloud sync? As you can see in the top, like it's telling you
So
the difference.
we see your folder. We see the Windows Explorer folder.
Okay, so can you see this one? There now. No.
I don't think you're sharing the screen. I think you're sharing an application window,
Okay.
as far as I can tell.
Okay.
This goes back to that security, right? It's more secure to share a window, but if the window opens another program, you have to share the screen or figure out what that other window is.
Some of us are Restream rookies, so I didn't even have my virtual background set up or the audio. So thank y'all for bearing with us.
Yes,
that's
Dan,
why
thank you for your patience. I am a newbie to Restream also, and I'm like messaging him like 100 times.
I'm sitting there going, how is he sharing his screen?
Yeah,
Frank,
Dan,
did
I
you
just
get
sent
the,
on that picture to you there.
okay, through the chat or LinkedIn?
Through the LinkedIn.
Okay, let me bring that up here. Yeah, that works. So then let's see if I can.
So it kind of
here.
makes Azure AD Connect kind of. Yep, that's it. It's kind of it looks as though that's going to be a thing of the past. Looking at this slide.
Yes. Yeah, good point.
You know,
I know
so
they even moved Active Directory to the cloud too. So Active Directory may be a thing of the past eventually.
well, I suppose the Active Directory in Azure is kind of a cut down version of the one you'd have on premise. It wouldn't be as, it doesn't have any, bells and whistles that the full Active Directory would have on premises.
Yeah, it has group policy, but yeah, there are some
Yeah.
limitations. It has to be in the cloud. I don't think you can extend it easily back, to on-premises servers or infrastructure, that type of thing. I think that's one of the limitations. But,
Yeah, I know.
over time, who knows?
Yeah, like with they have kind of different roles for different people's like admins and different stuff like that set up as default, but you can go in and make your own ones then if you wanted to.
Yes. Yeah.
Moving to the cloud actually makes a lot of sense. I worked for an organization that hadn't updated their on-premises SharePoint in 4 years. They hadn't done any of the security patches. And when I walked in, I was like, no way. And, this takes the onus off of the people that are managing those servers on-prem to make sure that they're always updated, they're always secure. And to make it cheaper, I mean, hello, that's even better. Usually it's more expensive.
Yeah, and Sherry, thank you so much for the links. You put in the links to a couple of the articles that talk about the Connect Sync.
I dipped my toe in the Azure pool. That's
Look
about
at
it.
that. Look at that. Frank, do you want me to bring up that video on YouTube, or how do you want to?
Yeah, it's just a couple of slides. One was just kind of explaining what Azure AD Connect is. I can just rattle off a few notes here. Like Azure AD Connect is a Microsoft tool designed to help organizations with hybrid environments. That's like having on-premises and stuff in the cloud. It includes a free, it's free with your Azure subscription. So as I was saying there, the other thing is actually cheaper. So obviously when you do get this Azure AD Connect, you're going to have to spin up some SQL servers and other stuff like that to store your stuff in. Whereas the other thing I was talking about there, the sync, you don't. But it says organizations use Azure AD Connect to automatically synchronize identity data between their on-premise Active Directory environment and the Azure Active Directory. That way users can use the same credentials across both on-premises applications and cloud services such as Microsoft 365. So that's a kind of, yeah, you got what is the Active Directory there? It's an identity directory service for users and computers, and that was developed by Microsoft and is used on most Windows domains. As you can see there in the slide, computers, contacts, groups, everything.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then as you move that to the cloud, it's either
Yeah.
through
That's it. There
syncing,
you
right,
go.
or building from scratch. You've got at least two options, maybe a third or fourth, depending on how you get to the cloud. But
yeah, that's a kind of good, like as Cherokee was saying there, that you can see there on the right hand side your multi clouds. You got your AWS and you can have Google Cloud and all kind of leveraged out through your Microsoft Cloud. So there's a good example of your multi cloud.
Yeah, but I know at least one of the Microsoft. So as a certified trainer, we all get access to basically the labs and the materials from the courses. And I know one of the courses, I just didn't have time to flip through all of them to see which one it was, has a virtual machine that's already set up as a domain. And you run Azure AD Connect on it to synchronize all those accounts up to Azure Active Directory. So you take the on-premises virtual machine, you run the tool, you put all the accounts up into the cloud, and then you have different ways that you can, password right back or put the passwords as hashes up in Azure. There's all sorts of different things that Azure AD Connect does. Does Azure AD Connect sync? I'll have to look into that. Sounds like the future for certain.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. When I was researching it now, it says like, why do we want Azure AD Connect when we have this other cheaper, easier to use option?
Yeah, yeah.
But I suppose the thing with you were seeing changes all the time. Every time you go back to see something, oh, this has changed, that's changed.
Yep.
When I first started diving into Azure, when they were doing the first certifications for they call it implementing Azure infrastructure. They
Mhm.
had a lot of the classic portal still in there, you know. So you had to know the classic portal and the new portal. And then the next time I went to do the certification for the new one, no sign of the classic, gone.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think they've made the transition. I think even the classic URL, I think, is broken now, where it just tells you, I don't know where you're trying to go. If you try to go to Windows Azure,
Yeah.
some of those links have just been removed. Excellent. So, Frank, I'll share the video with everybody on LinkedIn, and you can find this. Frank, I don't know if you have like a shortened name for your channel or anything.
No, it's just Frank Falvey, and you find my YouTube. I have a few videos up there that I started to do, but it was my first time, so I'm kind of going over stuff, and you're kind of getting stuck in words, and but I get to the end of it. You can see them there. See the blue ones down the bottom, like an overview of the
Yeah.
Azure portal, spinning up Linux virtual machine in the Azure portal, and using PuTTY to dial into it and running one or two commands, from the desktop.
Excellent.
Yeah, I just recently,
Yeah, that's the one.
in January did that too with a YouTube, but there's a lot to that. And Dan is just an adventurous soul with all these different tools and platforms. And so I'm glad to be here today, because I will say that if you're not, a full-time and you're not well versed in video editing and all that, there are a lot of challenges with posting on different platforms and everything. So it's a lot of work that goes into all that.
I'm getting a high-pitched noise on my end, and I think it's my computer, but I'm not 100%. Are you hearing that, or is that?
Yeah, can you hear that as well? I was turning off my own
Yeah.
mic.
Okay.
Yeah, it's probably your Apple interfering with.
It probably is. It's probably the fact that I'm using this goofy Apple computer that I haven't used in a long time. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that's our cue to call it a day here. Benjamin, thanks for. Yeah, the audio's moving in and out, and I'm not sure. I think that's on my end. I think it just got better.
Yeah.
But yes. So whatever we troubleshot, Cherokee, I think it's coming from you.
Okay, I don't know if you can hear me now.
We can.
Okay. Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, we're getting a high pitch behind it, and I don't know what's causing that, but we can hear you.
Okay, cool. I really didn't have anything else to say, but if I am unmuted, I will mention one thing that I was contemplating before this meeting today, but I think this meeting just preparation for it solidified the fact that I need to kind of brush up on some Azure, just basic things, like just to see how everything is looking and any kind of little updates there. So if anybody is interested, feel free to reach out to me. I'd like to host a quick little AZ900, a free class, just to, so if anyone's looking for a refresher, then hit me up on LinkedIn.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, that's good. I was actually going to be doing some the last Tuesday of this month on Azure fundamentals. So,
excellent.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Closing thoughts or words, items that you have coming up? Sherry?
Teams Stay Online is next week, and that's free if you want to search for it's Teams 10X, so the number 10X, if you want to join us for that one. And we also have the M365 Virtual Marathon coming up the first week of May. And I have Waffle Wednesday coming up it's the third Wednesday of every month. And next month is going to be moving your OneNote notebooks, because apparently it's a challenge. People are trying to drag and drop their OneNote notebooks from their files into cloud. And of course that doesn't work. So feel free to check those out.
Yeah.
Search for Shortcut Sherry, SHARI.
Yes, I was going to say you have to get the first name spelled correctly, or you can't find Sherry.
I answered any
Or
spelling.
shortcuts.
The internet just isn't as forgiving as me. Nobody spelled my name right my whole life. It's okay.
Anybody else? Closing thoughts? Cherokee, I did mute your mic because of the background noise, but thank you for being here. Rosemary, thank you for being here. I appreciate all three of you. Sherry, you're a newbie to this as well. And Restream is one of those things that until I got on it and spent some time, I was completely lost. So I applaud all of you coming on and, kind of learning and going with the flow. I think this went really well, and we learned a lot of different things. Benjamin has applauded Cherokee's demo, and Benjamin was one of the people that we've had on before that had a conflict today. So hopefully as we schedule these going forward, or maybe pick a time when it makes sense, the thought would be either submit videos that we'll show or be here live with us for the commentary and the live show. But thanks everyone. We're going to go ahead and shut down for the day here.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you everyone.
Thanks,
Bye.
Dan. Happy Friday.
Thanks for coming.
Okay, bye.
Yeah, you too.
Thanks.
Watch out for those April Fool's pranks.
Oh, yeah.
Go over to Dyson and tell me whether Dyson, the Dyson Air Mask looks like a real set of earphones or a headset to you or not. This totally looks like an April Fool's joke.
I saw a new one today, Dan. Yours with the flipping your monitor was something happened, but a friend of mine posted that that creepy clown from It. I can't remember his name of it. They took a sticker of that and put it in her backup camera on our car. So when she would back out of her driveway, I'm like, that's actually good. So I'm gonna have to take that one away for future.
Now this is the one I ran across late last night, and I was convinced, you don't have the Dyson. I'm not falling for your Dyson Flow headphones and mask, but apparently they've been putting out news releases that this is a real device that they're working on and they're planning to come out with later this year. So I'm sure we'll find out if it's real. But even the prototypes look to me like, that's got to be a joke. There's no way they're expecting to put a vacuum on your head. But I was talking to the hospital, and they said that looks like a CPAP machine. And I'm like, well, you got a good point,
Yeah, but at least the CPAP's on their back and not out to their side where you're going to knock somebody out if you walk past them. Yeah,
right, exactly. If this is real, I mean, I like the design they finally came up with where it's only out in front of you, but time will tell, right? Whether Dyson's really coming up with this or not.
That's funny.
So thank you all for jumping in, experimenting with me. I really appreciate it, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your Friday and Friday evening weekend. And we're gonna call it an afternoon here. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Dan.